Angel Reese just landed in Atlanta, and free agents are already running the other way. Not from Atlanta, from her. And the timing couldn't be more embarrassing because the second Chicago shipped her out, Skylar Diggins-Smith, DiJonai Carrington, Azurá Stevens, and Rickea Jackson all came sprinting to sign with the Sky. The same Chicago Sky that everyone kept saying was undesirable. The same franchise nobody supposedly wanted to join. Turns out the city was never the problem, and we've got 2 years of receipts to prove exactly who was. Why do you think nobody wants to play with Angel Reese? Let me know down in the comments below.
Now that Angel is gone, the players want to go there. Getting ugly. It's getting ugly. It's getting late early, as they say. I told you, they got rid of the disease. Angel Reese, now Chicago, moving in the right direction.
So let's talk about Angel Reese's stats for a second, because on paper they actually look pretty good. 2 All-Star selections, double-doubles across 2 seasons, rebounding numbers that got her compared to some of the best bigs in the league. So why did the Chicago Sky go 13-27 in her first year and then somehow get worse at 10-34 the next? That's not a rebuilding dip. That's a team moving in the wrong direction with the same centerpiece the whole time.
You don't get told no. Like, you're going to get the yeses. You're going to get more yeses than nos, and just being able to know that. So I'm excited for that. I know that's going to come soon.
The rebounding numbers are worth stopping on because they're not quite what they seem. A big chunk of Reese's rebounds came from offensive boards, and a lot of those offensive boards came from her own missed shots. So she'd miss, grab her own miss, maybe miss again, and every one of those grabbacks counted the same as pulling down a contested defensive rebound against a physical post player. That's not dominance.
In case you have not been paying attention, the Chicago Sky are on a mission right now. They are on a mission, and frankly, it's hilarious. And what is even more hilarious is the fact that some of these players that Angel Reese drowned, the Chicago Sky are starting to re-sign.
That's high-volume activity dressed up as production, and it never moved the win column. But the on-court stuff, as bad as it looks, wasn't even the part that finally broke things open. Courtney Vandersloot had spent years building her career in Chicago, won championships, earned every bit of respect she had in that locker room, and when she got hurt, Reese reportedly called her old and washed up. Not in a private conversation that stayed quiet, in a way that got back to the team fast. Vandersloot is the kind of player teammates run through walls for, so you can imagine how well that landed.
We can't rely on Courtney to come back at that age that she's at, Reese said. I know she'll be a great asset for us, but we can't rely on that. We need someone probably a little younger with some experience, somebody who's been playing the game and is willing to compete for a championship and has done it before. Courtney Vandersloot, by the way, 2-time WNBA champion, 5-time All-Star, 2-time All-WNBA first team, left the New York Liberty, a championship caliber team, to come help out the Chicago. Oh, damn. Oh, damn, oh, dang, oh, damn. It's all right, Courtney.
Camila Cardozo actually walked out. Not a subtle disagreement, not a tense practice that everyone moved past, but a full walkout during a team situation involving Reese. Cardozo is the player Chicago was genuinely building around, the one they saw as the future of that franchise, and she got to a point where staying in the room wasn't something she was willing to do. That tells you something about how bad the environment had gotten, because Cardozo isn't dramatic. She just plays basketball.
The worst part about this Camila Cardozo last night is you seeing her visibly giving up on her team here. Look at this. Look at this. Camila Cardozo literally walking towards the New York Liberty bench. Walking towards the New York Liberty bench. Like, hey, Brianna, Sabrina, scoot over a little bit. Let me take a seat. Hey, Sandy, is there any room on the bench for me? Can you guys use an extra player? Can I switch jerseys and see how I fit on this team?
Then came the suspension. Chicago suspended Reese, and franchises don't get there easily. A suspension is what happens when the front office has already tried the quieter options, the conversations, the warnings, the interventions, and none of it stuck. By the time a team suspends a player, the situation has usually been bad for a while, and the team has just run out of patience for managing it. What made it all so damaging was the consistency. This wasn't one bad week or one ugly incident that blew over. Reese's behavior followed the same pattern across 2 full seasons, and eventually her own teammates confirmed it publicly. They called her a locker room cancer. That phrase doesn't come out in professional sports unless the damage was real and it ran deep, because players protect each other by default. When they break from that and go on record, it means the situation affected how they worked, how they prepared, and how they felt walking into that building every single day.
Damn! An Angel Reese hit piece. This Angel Reese article, published by Yahoo Sports, didn't hold back one bit. From the get-go, it was on sight, it seems. Exposing the organization, couldn't stand her. Locker room cancer. The locker room now doing backflips that Angel Reese is gone. The whole double-double debacle.
So you had the front office watching the win totals drop while the locker room was quietly falling apart, and they could see both things happening at once. The stat sheet said Reese was producing. The team said she was a problem. And Chicago's front office eventually decided those two facts couldn't coexist anymore, so they started looking for a way out of the situation entirely. After her second straight playoff miss, Reese went on record telling the Chicago Tribune, "I'm not settling for the same stuff we did this year. We have to get good players, great players. That's a non-negotiable for me." The team heard that, looked at 2 years of losses, and quietly started making their own non-negotiable list.
Reese's contributions are all about making Reese look better on the stat sheet, not making her teammates better. Having 2 first-round draft picks for the next 2 years, however, a franchise can go ahead and create a formidable starting squad if you play your cards right. But even more of a benefit is the fact that, according to some reports, Sky players are thrilled that Reese is gone, making it pretty obvious she was viewed as a locker room cancer.
2 first-round picks and a second-round swap in 2028. That's what Atlanta gave Chicago for a player who'd made 2 straight All-Star rosters. People on the internet were losing their minds over it, with one commentator calling the return a bag of chips. And honestly, that's not far off. In the WNBA, 2 future first-rounders aren't nothing, but they're also not what you pay when you're acquiring someone you genuinely believe can change your franchise. They're what you pay when the team on the other end just wants the situation over. The way Chicago moved on tells you everything about how they saw this. Teams that reluctantly trade a star because of money or fit or something outside their control, they shop that player for months. They hold out for a proven piece in return. They make sure they get full value. Chicago didn't do any of that. Atlanta walked in with draft capital that won't show up on a court for years, and the Sky took it. One source put it plainly. The Sky wanted to get rid of her so bad, they grabbed the first offer that came through the door. That's not a franchise maximizing value on a star player. That's a franchise ending a situation.
Since they drafted Angel Reese, all of a sudden, the Bravado struggled to win games. And ESPN expects me to believe that the organization is the problem here? Either way, I don't think basketball had anything to do with why Angel Reese was traded. I think Angel Reese was traded because the Bravado thought that she was more trouble than she's worth.
No player of Reese's supposed caliber gets traded before her 3rd season for future picks, unless the team moving her has decided the picks are worth more than she is right now, which is a brutal thing for a 2-time All-Star's market value to say about itself. So Chicago took the picks and immediately got to work, and the speed of what followed was almost uncomfortable to watch if you're an Angel Reese fan. Skylar Diggins-Smith, a 7-time All-Star, signed with the Sky. DiJonai Carrington, the 2024 Most Improved Player and a first-team All-Defensive selection, signed with the Sky. Azurá Stevens, a veteran with real championship-level experience, signed with the Sky. Then Chicago traded for Rickea Jackson, one of the most electric young scorers available anywhere. None of these players needed convincing. None of them dragged their feet or asked hard questions about the environment or took weeks to decide. They just came.
Sky players reportedly sick of Angel Reese as locker room relief hits after the trade. The blockbuster trade ends Reese's 2-season tenure with the Sky, during which she established herself as one of the league's top rebounders and earned All-Star honors in both years. While Reese quickly embraced her new chapter, celebrating on social media and stepping out in public with a new hairstyle, an anonymous source close to the Chicago organization claims the move has brought significant relief inside their locker room.
For 2 full years, the story around Chicago was that it was an undesirable destination. Too cold, too disorganized, a franchise going nowhere. That story ran for exactly as long as Reese was on the roster, and it evaporated the week she left. Stars weren't avoiding Chicago because of Chicago. They were avoiding whatever was happening inside that locker room. And the minute that locker room changed, the phone started ringing. And then, while all of this free agent activity was pouring in, the Sky gave Reese's number 5 jersey to Rickea Jackson. Just handed it right over. Reese's fans immediately crashed out online, demanding the number be retired, which is genuinely one of the funniest things to happen in this whole situation, because jersey retirements are for players who brought their teams championships, deep playoff runs, something worth preserving. Reese's teams went 13-27, then 10-34. There's nothing to retire. The Sky didn't just move on from Reese, they actively replaced her name, her number, and the entire narrative around their franchise, and they did it fast enough that it didn't even feel like a transition.
Are the Chicago Sky about to win twice as many games as they won last year? Are they sneaky a playoff team right now? With some of these signings that they made? Skylar Diggins, folks. Skylar Diggins. That's a hell of a player.
Atlanta, meanwhile, watched all of this happen and still called Reese a perfect fit and a dynamic talent whose competitiveness matched their vision. Brittany Griner, who'd been a key piece of Atlanta's 2025 roster, left for the Connecticut Sun just days after the trade went through. Let's talk about how Atlanta sold this trade to their fans. They went 30-14 in the 2025 regular season, earned a top seed, and then lost in the first round to the Indiana Fever, a team that was so banged up they were practically playing with spare parts. Aaliyah Boston competed. Kelsey Mitchell competed. But the Fever were short-handed, running without Caitlin Clark and a chunk of their healthy roster, and they still knocked Atlanta out in the first round. That's the team the Dream are now counting on Angel Reese to help them beat. So let's do the roster math, because it's not flattering. Atlanta's 2026 group is basically the same roster that lost that series, except they replaced Brittany Griner with Reese. Griner won 2 championships, earned a league MVP, and spent years as one of the most decorated big women in basketball history. Reese has never played a playoff game. Not one. So Atlanta took a player with 2 rings and a trophy case and traded that spot on the roster to someone whose teams finished 13-27, then 10-34. And they're calling this an upgrade.
The Atlanta Dream now look like a team on paper with Ryan Howard, with Alicia Gray, with Brittany Griner, and now the league's top rebounder added to their roster. Atlanta should, and I think they went 30-14 last season. Atlanta should be a title contender, although I'm very suspicious because I think Angel Reese is a poison and a toxin that has been added to that locker room.
Alicia Gray finished 4th in MVP voting last season, and Ryan Howard is genuinely one of the better perimeter players in the league, so it's not like Atlanta has nothing to work with. Both of them space the floor, move well off the ball, and can create their own shot when they need to. The concern isn't their talent. It's whether Reese's habits inside the paint, the stat chasing, the friction she carried with her in Chicago, start affecting how a team that was already competitive actually functions together when the games matter. And then free agency rolled around, and Atlanta didn't exactly become the hottest destination in the league. Reports started spreading that players around the WNBA had heard what came out of Chicago, and some of them weren't racing to sign with a roster built around Reese. That's how locker room reputations work. There's no press release, no official announcement, just agents talking to agents, players texting players, and word moving through the league the way it always does. By the time a team is trying to recruit in free agency, everyone already knows what the environment looks like, and some players decided they'd rather go somewhere else.
But this would be my advice to those young ladies that you mentioned, right, on that new Atlanta team of hers. Get ready to stick your hands out like this and never get the ball. Because she's going to get the rebound, get another rebound, get another rebound, another rebound, and another me-bound. And there's going to be, I'm fascinated by this in this sense. And Scap, I'm going to watch some highlight clips of Atlanta starting this season. I'm going to watch the body language of those teammates when that happens.
Reese reportedly turned furious when she noticed free agents weren't jumping at the chance to join her in Atlanta. She wanted to know why players weren't lining up, and that question alone is pretty revealing because the answer was sitting right in front of her the whole time. Chicago, the city everyone spent 2 years calling a dead-end destination, suddenly attracted 4 high-level players within weeks of shipping Reese out. Diggins-Smith, Carrington, Stevens, Jackson, all of them signed or got traded to the Sky without much hesitation at all. Reese watched that happen and still couldn't connect what Chicago's free agent success right after her departure said about her own role in Chicago's previous free agent failures. That's not bad luck. That's a pattern, and the rest of the league read it clearly even if she didn't.
I think, Angel Reese, listen and listen clear. You better take full advantage of this opportunity with the Atlanta Dream. Okay, you are playing with Ryan Howard and Alicia Gray. They are all stars, 20-point per game scores. All you have to do is be the role player that you were born to be.
Atlanta took a swing. They paid nothing in current players and gave up future draft picks, so the financial logic isn't crazy on the surface. But they didn't account for what Reese's reputation would cost them when they went looking for players to fill out the rest of the roster. And now they're heading into 2026 with essentially the same group that got bounced in the first round by a shorthanded Fever team. Chicago looks completely different right now, and it happened fast. Like, uncomfortably fast if you were an Angel Reese fan watching from the outside. 2 years of the same losing record, the same playoff miss, the same nobody wants to play in Chicago narrative, and then Reese leaves and within weeks the whole thing flips. That speed isn't a coincidence. That's a franchise that knew exactly what it needed to do the second the obstacle cleared.
It is pretty clear. Chicago Sky as an organization and as management and as a coaching staff said, we are not putting more money into this team. We are not building this team around Angel Reese.
Camila Cardoso is who Chicago is actually building around, and she's a fundamentally different player to construct a roster on top of. Cardoso operates within a system, she doesn't force things, and she doesn't make teammates feel like coming to practice is something they need to mentally prepare for. That last part sounds like a low bar, but after 2 years of what that locker room went through, it apparently wasn't. Skylar Diggins-Smith running the point changes everything about how that offense moves, because she's a 7-time All-Star who's run winning systems before and knows how to make players around her better. Carrington coming in on the defensive end means opponents can't just freely operate on the perimeter anymore, and she earned Most Improved Player and a first-team All-Defensive nod in 2024, so she's not just a role player. Azurá Stevens brings the kind of experience you can't manufacture on a young roster. Rickea Jackson scores, and she does it in ways that open up the floor for everyone else. Chicago didn't just replace Reese. They replaced her with 4 players who collectively do more than she ever did. And they did it because those players were suddenly willing to come.
They traded away Angel Reese and then said, we're going in. We're going in. Right here, right now. Had to get her off the team to get these players to come here.
The irony that fans keep pointing out online is pretty brutal. These are exactly the kinds of moves Reese publicly demanded the Sky make while she was there. She wanted great players, said it was non-negotiable, and the Sky went out and got them, just not with her on the roster. Now let's talk about what this means for the Indiana Fever, because the Eastern Conference getting more competitive isn't just an interesting storyline, it's a real complication for Indiana's path through the bracket in 2026. Chicago is building fast. Atlanta made their gamble. Other teams are retooling. On paper, the Fever's road just got harder. But none of those retooled rosters have Caitlin Clark, and that's not a small thing. Clark arrived in Indiana when the Fever owned the worst record in the league, and she dragged them to the playoffs in her first season. Kelsey Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston, Lexi Hull, and Sophie Cunningham were around her, and that group beat Atlanta in the first round while shorthanded. What Clark does to a defense isn't just about her own scoring. She pulls defenders out of position from 30 feet away, which frees Boston to work in the post without a double team waiting for her, gives Mitchell running room in transition, and lets Hull and Cunningham catch the ball in space on the perimeter instead of fighting through traffic. The whole offense breathes differently with Clark running it, and that's not something you can replicate by signing veterans in the offseason.
You know, the dynasty starts after you, not with you. Chicago Sky to Angel Reese. Woo-wee! I told you that AR disease ran deep. Nobody wanted to play with that. That is wild.
Chicago's rebuild is real, and the roster construction is smart, but they're still chasing something the Fever already have. Indiana didn't need an offseason transformation because the foundation was already there. They just needed another year of games together, another year of Clark learning the league, and the league failing to figure her out. Reese spent 2 years keeping Chicago stuck in reconstruction mode, which meant the Fever got 2 extra years to build something Atlanta and Chicago are only now starting to catch up to. Angel Reese led the league in rebounding 2 years straight, made 2 all-star rosters, and left Chicago with the franchise handing her jersey number to someone else within weeks. That's a very specific kind of legacy to leave behind. Caitlin Clark walked into Indiana when the Fever owned the worst record in the league and turned them into playoff winners in 1 season, doing it with her teammates, not over them. And that gap between those 2 careers isn't closing. Atlanta can't fill their roster, Chicago keeps signing stars, and Reese is sitting there wondering why nobody's calling. Why do you think nobody wants to play with Angel Reese? Let me know down in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss out. Click the video on the screen, and we will see you in the next one.